Russia's War in Ukraine by Helen Reagan and Andrew Rain, CNN. What we're covering: Russia plans to isolate the key city of Severodonetsk in eastern Ukraine in the coming days. Ukrainian military officials said the twin cities of Severodonetsk and Lysychansk are the epicenter of fighting in the east, and Russian armed forces have destroyed the second of three bridges between the two cities. A former British Army soldier has been shot and killed while fighting in Severodonetsk, his family said on social media. Putin absolutely has weaponized food by blockading grain exports from Ukraine and causing a global food shortage. The White House said on Sunday, Ukraine, the United States and other nations are scrambling to find alternative routes to overcome the export blockade. Ukraine's commander-in-chief of the armed forces said there is a 2,450 kilometer, 1,522 miles front line, and that Russia is concentrating its main efforts in the northern part of the Luhansk region. The Ukrainian forces pushed back from center of Severodonetsk, says military, from CNN's Oleksandra, Ochman, and Mick, Krever. Russia has pushed the Ukrainian forces back from the center of Severodonetsk, the armed forces of Ukraine AFU said Monday morning. The enemy, with the support of artillery, carried out assault operations in the city of Severodonetsk, had partial success, pushed our units away from the city center. Hostilities continued, said the AFU. Russia was seeing success due to a significant advantage in artillery, said Serhiy Hidey, head of the Luhansk region military administration, via telegram. Hidey said around 500 civilians, including 40 children, are still sheltering at the city's Azot chemical plant, which is coming under heavy bombardment by large-caliber enemy artillery, he said. Ukrainian forces were trying to evacuate people, said Hidey. Azot shelters are not as strong as those in Mariupol's Azovstal. Ukraine appeals for heavy weapons parity ahead of defense summit, from CNN's Oleksandra, Ochman, and Mick, Krever. Ukrainian service members fire a BM-21 Grad multiple rocket launch system near the town of Lysychansk, Luhansk region, Ukraine on June 12. Gleb Garanich, Reuters. Ukraine is appealing for heavy weapons parity ahead of a summit of defense ministers in Brussels on Wednesday. Being straightforward, to end the war we need heavy weapons parity, said Mikhailo Polyak, advisor to the head of the office of the Ukrainian president, via Twitter. Polyak said that Ukraine needed 1,000 howitzers caliber 155mm, 300 MLRS, 500 tanks, 2,000 armored vehicles, 1,000 drones. NATO will on Wednesday host the Ukrainian defense minister, along with allied ministers and officials from Sweden, Finland, Georgia, and the European Union. Amnesty accuses Russia of war crimes in Kharkiv, from CNN's Mick, Krever in London. An area of completely destroyed settlements after shelling in northern Saltivka 3 neighborhood of Kharkiv in eastern Ukraine on June 12th. Amnesty International has accused Russia of war crimes during its efforts to capture the northeastern Ukrainian city of Kharkiv. In a new 40-page report, Amnesty has documented the alleged use of cluster munitions and other discriminate means of attack, the repeated bombardments of residential neighborhoods in Kharkiv are indiscriminate attacks which killed and injured hundreds of civilians, and as such constitute war crimes. the report said. This is true, both for the strikes carried out using cluster as well as those conducted using other types of unguided rockets and unguided artillery shells, which are indiscriminate when used in the vicinity of concentrations of civilians. Amnesty's researchers say they documented 7 strikes in different areas of Kharkiv, where they found fins and pellets of 9N210 or 9N235 cluster munitions. Some context. The United Nations Convention on Cluster Munitions, which came into force in 2010, bans the use of cluster munitions. Russia is not party to the treaty, neither is the United States. Cluster bombs are inherently discriminate, Amnesty's report said. Rockets release dozens of submunitions in midair, scattering them indiscriminately over a large area measuring hundreds of square meters. In addition, cluster munitions have a high death rate, with a high percentage failing to explode on impact, and thus effectively becoming landmines, which pose a threat to civilians long after deployment. Amnesty also said that Russia has used the PTM-1S, a small, scalable anti-personnel mine. Donatilla Rovera, Amnesty International's senior crisis response advisor, said that the investigation was a further indication of utter disregard for civilian lives. People have been killed in their homes and in the streets, in playgrounds and in cemeteries, while queuing for humanitarian aid or shopping for food and medicine, she said. The repeated use of widely banned cluster munitions is shocking. Russian officials have repeatedly insisted that they do not target civilians.